The call came in at 7:14 on a Tuesday morning, and Nadia Ose-Mensah almost didn't answer it. She was already running late. Her coffee was cold. The Yonge Street bus had been delayed 23 minutes because of a water main break somewhere near Eglinton, and by the time she got to the hotel lobby, with her cart and her laminated ID badge and her earbuds tucked into her collar, the shift supervisor, a man named Craig, who had worked at the Elgin Grand for 11 years and acted like he'd built the place himself, was standing at the staff entrance with a clipboard and an expression that said he'd already decided how her morning was going to go. "Suite 1408 needs a full turnover," he said, without looking up. "The Hargreave party checked out early. Room's a mess. Start there." He said it the way you say something to no one in particular, the way you say something to furniture. Nadia took the key card and didn't respond. She'd been a housekeeper at the Elgin Grand for 6 years. She knew Suite 1408. She knew every suite. She knew which windows faced west and got the afternoon glare, which rooms had plumbing that knocked in the walls on cold mornings, which guests left their laundry in a pile, and which ones left it folded at the foot of the bed, like they were embarrassed to make her job harder. She knew things about this building that Craig had never noticed, because Craig spent his mornings at the staff desk, looking at his clipboard, and his afternoons sending emails about towel inventory. She loaded her cart and took the service elevator to the 14th floor. Suite 1408 was, in fact, a mess, but Nadia had seen worse. She opened the curtains, stripped the bed, sorted the linens into the cart bags the way she'd been doing since she was 31 years old. She was 47 now. Her lower back gave her trouble on long shifts. She'd started keeping a small cushioned mat on the bottom shelf of her cart for the moments when she had to kneel beside the tub for extended scrubbing. It wasn't glamorous. She'd stopped needing it to be. What most people never thought to ask, what Craig certainly never asked, was what Nadia did between 4 in the afternoon and 10 at night, 5 days a week, in the second bedroom of the house she'd owned outright since 2019. She was a licensed paralegal in the province of Ontario. She'd passed her exam on the first try 7 years ago, while working full-time at the hotel. She'd studied from 9 to midnight, 6 nights a week, for 2 years straight, at the dining table after her daughter was in bed. She'd specialized in landlord-tenant law, then expanded into employment law, then small claims. She had 43 active clients. She had a filing system that a Bay Street lawyer had once called frankly impressive. She had a website, a business phone number, and a reputation in the Scarborough community that meant something. She had never told anyone at the Elgin Grand. Not because she was ashamed of either thing. She cleaned rooms because the schedule worked with her daughter's school hours, and because the benefits were good, and because, frankly, she was good at it. She was methodical. She was thorough. She did not cut corners. And she kept the two worlds separate, not out of secrecy, but out of a kind of precision. The same precision that made her a good paralegal. You don't mix files. You don't cross-contaminate. You keep things clean. If you want to stop right here, pause for a moment. Because what happens next happens fast. And it matters that you understand who Nadia Ose-Mensah was before the moment that changed everything. She was not a woman who had been waiting for her moment to arrive. She was a woman who had already been living her moment quietly, for years. That distinction is important. That distinction is everything. The Elgin Grand wasn't the kind of hotel that showed up in travel blogs. It was the kind of hotel that corporate accounts used when they needed a downtown Toronto address that said serious without saying flashy. 16 floors, 212 rooms, a restaurant on the ground floor called 44 that served the kind of food where the portions were small and the menu had no prices on the side they handed to guests. Nadia had eaten there once, on her lunch break, when the kitchen had sent up a staff plate by mistake. The risotto had been, she thought, genuinely extraordinary. She'd mentioned it to no one. The morning Craig called her to turn over Suite 1408 was a Tuesday in November, and by 11 o'clock Nadia was finished, and had moved on to a standard double on 12. By noon she was in the staff break room eating the lunch she'd packed. Rice, stewed chicken, a small container of fried plantain that her daughter Yewande had packed for her with a sticky note on the lid that said, "Eat this first." "Mom, I know you won't," when her phone buzzed with a message from a client. His name was Mr. Delroy Mensa, no relation, and he was 64 years old and had been a tenant in a Mississauga apartment building for 19 years. His landlord, a numbered company registered out of a law firm in Etobicoke, had served him an N13 notice. They were claiming the unit was needed for major repairs, and he'd have to vacate by the end of February. Nadia had been working his file for 3 months. She knew the N13. She knew the Residential Tenancies Act. She knew that landlords abused the N13 with some regularity, and she knew how to fight it. The message said the landlord's representative had called him that morning and told him, verbally, that they'd make it worth his while to vacate early and quietly without going to the landlord and tenant board. Nadia typed back 3 sentences. "Do not agree to anything. Do not sign anything. Call me tonight at 7. Then she put her phone down, finished her rice, and went back to work. She was restocking the supply closet on the 8th floor at 2:47 that afternoon when she heard voices down the corridor. Not loud, but the kind of voices that carry anyway, the kind that don't bother modulating because they've never had to. 2 men. Coming from the direction of the executive lounge. One was a guest she'd seen that morning, checking in at the front desk while she passed through the lobby. Tall, white, mid-50s, the kind of man who wore a suit the way other men wear skin. He'd been on his phone the whole time, not looking at the desk agent who was checking him in, not looking at anyone. His name, she would learn later, was Bryce Calloway Trent. He was apparently the founder and majority shareholder of something called Trent Capital Partners, which had offices in Calgary and Vancouver and a website that used the word visionary 3 times on the homepage. The other man was shorter, younger, with the slightly harried look of someone paid to anticipate problems before they became problems. He was carrying an iPad and a leather folio and appeared to be giving a summary of something in a low, continuous voice. Nadia moved her cart to the side of the corridor to let them pass. Bryce Calloway Trent looked at her the way you look at a wall. Then he looked again. Then he said something. Not to her, to the man with the iPad, in French. Quebecois French, fast and colloquial, the kind you learn in Montreal when you're young, and you move in certain circles, and you never expect a hotel housekeeper to understand a word. What he said was not polite. It was the kind of thing that gets said in French because saying it in English would feel, to the person saying it, too explicit. Too on record. French provides a kind of deniability that English does not. He made a comment about her, about how she was standing, about the look on her face. He used a word she would not repeat, and he said it with a small laugh, the kind that's meant to be shared, the kind that requires a witness to be complete. The man with the iPad laughed, briefly, with his mouth closed. And Nadia Mensa, who had learned French at Université du Québec à Montréal, where she had studied for 2 years, before moving to Toronto, who had grown up in a household where her father watched French news, and her mother had insisted on French immersion from age 8, who still read French novels when she had time, who had once translated a 40-page lease agreement from French into English for a client who couldn't afford a translator. Nadia heard every word. She understood every syllable. She did not react immediately. This was not strategy. This was not restraint for the sake of performance. This was something older, something her mother had given her years ago. The instruction to be sure before you move, to know the room before you speak. To understand exactly what is happening, and what it means before you decide what it costs you. She finished moving her cart to the side. She looked at Bryce Calloway Trent, and then she said, in French, in a clear and unhurried voice, "Monsieur, I understood that." The man with the iPad stopped walking. Bryce Calloway Trent turned around. She continued, still in French, clean and precise, and said that she would appreciate it if he did not speak about her that way in a language he assumed she didn't know. That she had worked in this building for 6 years, that she took her work seriously. That she would be happy to assist him with anything he required, as that was her job, but that what he had said about her in the hallway was not acceptable, and she wanted him to understand that she had heard it. Then she stopped, waited, The silence lasted long enough to feel like a room. Bryce Calloway Trent's face moved through several expressions in the space of a few seconds. There was surprise first, genuine, unguarded, the kind of surprise that doesn't have time to protect itself. Then something like recalculation. Then, because men like Bryce Calloway Trent have been arriving at this particular door their whole lives and have always found it open, there was something that looked almost like irritation. "I'll be speaking to management," he said, in English now. "That's your right," Nadia said, also in English. And she wheeled her cart down the hall toward the supply elevator, because she still had 2 rooms to finish before her shift ended. If you're watching this right now and you think you know how this ends, if you think it ends with an apology in the lobby, or a call to corporate, or Nadia filing a complaint and being quietly asked not to make things difficult, I want you to keep watching. Because the truth is stranger than any of those endings, and it's better. Craig caught up with her at 3:20. He had the expression he reserved for situations that were going to require him to do something he didn't want to do. "We've had a guest complaint," he said. "Suite 1408. Mr. Trent." He paused. "He said there was an incident in the 8th floor corridor." "There was," Nadia said. She was folding a fitted sheet with the particular efficient economy she'd developed over years. "He made a remark about me in French. I let him know I understood. He said he'd speak to management." "Your management?" Craig looked at her. "He's saying you were confrontational." "I addressed him calmly," she said. "In French, which I speak." Craig blinked. She could see him processing this visibly, the way you watch someone work through arithmetic on their face. "You speak French," he said. "Yes." He looked at his clipboard as though it might have something useful to say. It did not. "He's asking for a room change," Craig said finally. "And he's..." Craig paused. He seemed to be selecting words. "He's indicated he has some association with the hotel's corporate account. Through his company." "I understand," Nadia said. "I'm going to have to bring this to the general manager." "I'd expect nothing less," she said. And then, because she was 47 years old and had been doing this for a long time and had nothing to prove to the supply closet, she added, "You should also know that what Mr. Trent said in that hallway may constitute a violation of the Ontario Human Rights Code, Section 5, specifically harassment in a workplace setting. I'm raising that formally right now, so it's on record. You can note that in whatever you're writing." Craig looked at her. She pulled a new cart bag from the shelf and snapped it open. "Have a good afternoon, Craig," she said. What Nadia did not tell Craig, and what she did not tell anyone else at the hotel that afternoon, was that she already knew who Bryce Calloway Trent was. Not personally, professionally. 3 weeks earlier, a woman named Emmeline Joubert had come to Nadia's home office on a Thursday evening, sat across from her at the desk, and placed a folder on the table. Emmeline was 61 years old, originally from Montreal, a former administrative coordinator for a real estate company in Oakville. She had worked for that company for 14 years. She had been dismissed 8 months ago, 2 weeks after filing an internal complaint about workplace harassment. The company was a subsidiary of a holding firm. The holding firm had been absorbed through a series of acquisitions by a parent company. The parent company had a board. One of the board members was listed, in public filings, as Bryce C. Trent. Nadia had pulled those filings herself. She had the documents. She had the timeline. She had Emmeline's statements. She had, pending confirmation of a few remaining details, what she believed to be a very compelling small claims matter, with the possibility of escalation to the Human Rights Tribunal. She had not yet found an opening to formalize the connection. The subsidiary structure was deliberately opaque, the kind of layered incorporation that was technically legal and practically designed to exhaust anyone trying to follow the thread. But she had been following the thread, and now the thread had walked down the 8th floor corridor of the Elgin Grand Hotel and made a comment in French about the way she was standing. If you're a person of faith, you might call this something. If you're not, you might call it coincidence. Nadia called it a file that had just moved considerably forward. She didn't speak to Emmeline that night. She had the call with Delroy Mensa at 7. And that ran until 8:15, and by the time she hung up, she had filed a note to herself on the tablet she kept on the desk, Trent. Floor 14. Witness. Staff member with iPad, full ID unknown. Date, time, location recorded. Will follow up. She made tea. She sat for a few minutes at the kitchen table. Yewande came in from her room, still in her school uniform, and stood by the kettle. Rough day? Yewande said. Interesting day, Nadia said. Her daughter looked at her the way 20-year-olds look at their parents, when they know something is being understated, but don't yet know how to press for more. Then she poured herself water and went back to her room. Nadia drank her tea. In the morning, she would email the hotel's general manager, a woman named Patricia O.C. Darkwa, no relation again, with a formal written account of the incident, time-stamped, specific, citing the relevant section of the code. She would do it in clear, plain language, with headings. The way she'd learned to write every document that might one day be read by someone who needed to understand it quickly. She would also, that same morning, send a message to a contact of hers, a staff lawyer at a legal aid clinic in North York, asking whether he knew anyone at the Federal Competition Bureau who handled connected entity investigations. But that was tomorrow. Tonight, she washed her mug, turned off the kitchen light, and went to check on her daughter, who had fallen asleep at her desk with her laptop still open and a half-eaten granola bar by the keyboard. Nadia closed the laptop. She pulled a blanket from the chair in the corner and draped it over Yewande's shoulders. Then she went to her own room and went to sleep, because she had an early shift and 2 files to review before 7. The hotel's general manager, Patricia O.C. Darkwa, called Nadia into her office on Thursday morning. Patricia was a compact, precise woman in her mid-50s who had been managing the Elgin Grand for 4 years, and who had, in Nadia's estimation, approximately twice the competence of anyone who worked above her in the corporate structure, and slightly less than half the recognition. They had not been close. They were professional and courteous, and had spoken perhaps a dozen times in 6 years, mostly about logistics. Patricia read Nadia's email in full. Nadia knew this because Patricia's copy was printed and had 3 lines underlined in blue ink. "You have a paralegal license," Patricia said. "Yes. Active?" "Yes. Since 2018. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Outside the window, King Street was doing its usual Thursday morning thing. Delivery trucks, cyclists cutting through traffic, a man standing very still outside the coffee shop across the street reading something on his phone. "Mr. Trent has submitted a formal complaint through his corporate account manager," Patricia said. "He is describing the incident as an employee acting inappropriately toward a guest." "I have my own written account," Nadia said, "including exact language used, time, location, and the fact that I addressed him in measured, professional terms." Patricia looked at her. Not the way Craig had looked at her, differently. "Was there a witness?" Patricia said. "Mr. Trent's assistant. I don't have a name. He was carrying an iPad and a leather folio. He was present for the full exchange." Patricia wrote something on a notepad. "I want to be clear about something," Nadia said. "I'm not looking to make this harder for you or for the hotel. I'm looking to make sure that what happened is accurately on record. If Mr. Trent wants to take this further, that's his choice. But I have a formal complaint registered under Section 5 of the Human Rights Code. I have a written incident account, and I have documentation of what was said." "What was said, specifically?" Patricia said. She was watching Nadia carefully. Nadia told her, in French first, then in English. Patricia O.C. Darkwa did not flinch. But she did set her pen down. "He said that," Patricia said, flatly. "Yes." Patricia looked out the window for a moment. Then she looked back. "Give me until end of day," she said. What happened between Thursday morning and Friday afternoon, Nadia learned only partially and only later. Some of it she pieced together from what Patricia told her. Some of it she learned from the legal aid contact in North York, who turned out to know someone at a regulatory body, who turned out to be aware of Trent Capital Partners for reasons entirely separate from anything Nadia had filed. What Nadia knew on Friday afternoon, when Patricia called her back into the office, was this: Bryce Calloway, Trent's assistant. His name, it turned out, was Stefan Leclerc, and he was 29 years old and had been working for Trent for 16 months. Had submitted a written statement to hotel management that corroborated Nadia's account in full. He had done it without being asked twice. He had done it, Patricia told her, with what she described as visible relief. Trent Capital Partners' corporate account with the Elgin Grand's parent hotel group had, by Friday morning, been escalated to the group's legal and compliance department. Nadia was not told why. She did not need to be. Mr. Trent had checked out of suite 1408 on Thursday evening, and on Friday afternoon, Patricia O.C. Darkwa offered Nadia a position that had, apparently, been quietly discussed for some months but never formalized. A guest relations and compliance liaison role, 3 days a week, which would involve, among other things, helping the hotel draft its harassment response protocols and employee rights documentation. It pays $38 an hour, Patricia said. We'd keep you on the housekeeping roster 2 days as well if you want, during the transition, or not. Nadia thought about this. I'd want to be clear that my paralegal practice continues independently, she said. I would expect nothing else, Patricia said. There's a thing that happens, sometimes, when you've been invisible for long enough. Not invisible by choice. Not invisible because of failure or smallness. Invisible because the world has a particular and persistent habit of looking at certain people and seeing only what it expects to see. What happens is this. You stop waiting to be seen. You start building. Quietly, consistently. With your head down, not because you're ashamed, but because the work requires your full attention, and the room's opinion of you is simply not relevant to whether the work gets done. And then one day, on a Tuesday in November, on the 8th floor, with your cart to the side of the corridor, someone says something that they said because they were certain you couldn't understand it. And you can. And the room shifts. Nadia did not celebrate that Friday. She picked up Yewande from her afternoon lab class at Seneca. They drove home on the 401 in the particular stop-and-go rhythm of a Toronto Friday evening, and Nadia told her daughter what had happened while they waited for a red light at Kennedy. Yewande listened. She was quiet for a moment. Did you know he was going to be there? She said. The Trent guy. From Emmeline's file. No, Nadia said. I didn't know until I heard his name. That's wild, Yewande said. It is what it is, Nadia said. She signaled, changed lanes. How was lab? Yewande looked at her mother with an expression that said, you're doing it again. The same expression she'd had since she was 12, when she'd realized that her mother had a habit of treating the most extraordinary things in her own life as simply the next item on a list. Mom, she said. What? It's okay to think something is a big deal. Nadia drove. It's a big deal, she said, eventually. Yewande nodded. Looked out the window at the eastbound 401, the lights of 100 cars ahead of them, the dark line of the sky above the overpass. Emmeline is going to be okay, Yewande said. It wasn't a question. She's going to be okay, Nadia said. We have the documents. We have the timeline. We have a witness statement that moved considerably this week. She's going to be okay. They drove the rest of the way in the particular comfortable silence that belongs to people who have been through enough together that they don't need to fill every space with words. The man who carried the water carafe, the woman who folded the sheets, the person standing behind the supply cart in the corridor, moving to the side so you can pass. You don't know what they know. You don't know what they've built, quietly, in the hours you've never thought to ask about. You don't know what they've heard you say about them in the languages you've borrowed as a shield. Bryce Calloway Trent didn't know. He found out on the 8th floor of the Elgin Grand Hotel on a Tuesday in November, between a supply cart and a set of linen closet doors, in 47 words of precise, unhurried French. If this story reached you today, if you've been the person in that corridor, the one who's been looked through, talked around, reduced to a function rather than a full human being, let this be a reminder, the credential you earned at midnight, the file you've been building for 3 years, the language you learned because your mother insisted. None of it disappears because someone didn't bother to ask. It just waits, and it speaks when the moment is right. If you found this story meaningful, go ahead and like it. It genuinely helps this channel reach people who need to hear it. If you're new to Birthright Tales, we tell stories about people whose full lives run deeper than what's on the surface. Subscribe and stay with us. And if you have someone in your life who needs to hear this one today, a sister, a mother, a colleague, anyone who's been looked through. Share it with them. They'll know why. We'll see you in the next one.